Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
There's something about turning 50 that makes a man feel like he should have already figured everything out, like there's a secret manual other men were handed, and you somehow missed your copy while standing in line for life. So when I walked into my own backyard that evening, hearing my daughter's voice crackle on the wireless mic as she welcomed everyone to Dad's Big 5-0, I wasn't thinking about secrets or suspicions or the ache in my right knee that never fully healed from my fall off the roof last spring. I was thinking about the ribs I had smoked for 6 hours, the stupid little crown someone stuck on top of the cake, and how Tina, my wife of 27 years, looked so goddamn good in that green dress that I felt lucky just standing near her. We had the patio lights strung up, the fire pit roaring like it had something to prove, and around 30 people milling about, friends from work, neighbors, some cousins I'd barely talk to but who always show up when there's free food. Lily, our daughter, had coordinated it all behind my back, which was impressive considering she still needs reminders to buy toilet paper when it's her week. But she pulled it off, and I remember standing there, beer in hand, feeling this warm swell of gratitude I hadn't felt in years. Like maybe, after all the missed vacations, the late nights at the office, the bills that never stopped showing up, we had finally hit a rhythm. Comfortable. Safe. Familiar. So when Tina raised her glass and said those words, those exact goddamn words, I didn't flinch. I didn't throw the glass, didn't storm off or make a scene. I smiled. I nodded. I even laughed a little, just to match the energy in the room. Because that's what you do when your wife says, in front of your entire family and half your social circle, here's to 20 years of faking it, and you're too stunned to do anything but play along. It wasn't a joke. That's the thing I figured out about 3 seconds later, when no one else really laughed either. There were these awkward chuckles, a few confused glances, and Lily's expression froze like she'd just been slapped with a wet towel. I looked at Tina, then really looked at her, and she wasn't smiling. Her face was this blank, polished surface, like a mirror that reflects back nothing at all. And then, just like that, she leaned in, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered, "Cut the cake, baby." So I did. What the hell else was I supposed to do? I sliced through the frosting like I hadn't just been gutted, handed the first piece to my daughter, and kept smiling while inside my mind cracked like drywall behind old wallpaper. People started muttering, shifting uncomfortably, like they were waiting for me to throw a punch or at least ask, what the hell did that mean? But I didn't. I poured myself another beer, clinked bottles with Dave, my best friend since sophomore year, and kept pretending like nothing happened. But something had happened. Later that night, after most of the guests had left and the fire had burned low, I sat alone at the edge of the patio, staring into the coals like they might give me answers. Tina was inside, probably washing dishes she didn't need to wash, or texting one of her sisters about how Mark took it well. I heard footsteps behind me and thought it might be her, but it was Dave. He sat down next to me, reeking of cologne and too many deviled eggs. "You all right, man?" he asked, too casual, like maybe he already knew the answer. "I'm fine," I said, and meant it more than I didn't. She was just messing around. "You know Tina?" I nodded slowly, eyes still locked on the red-orange glow of the dying fire. "Yeah, she's always had a weird sense of humor." But something about the way he said it, the way he didn't quite meet my eyes, scratched at the back of my brain like a tick under the skin. And then, as he stood to go back inside, I caught it. Just a glimpse. Tina was in the kitchen, smiling at something on her phone, and when Dave passed the window, she looked up and gave him this little smirk, one I'd never seen before. Like an inside joke I wasn't part of. Then, as he walked past her, I saw her hand reach out, just for a second, and touch the back of his leg. It could have been nothing. But it wasn't nothing. You know when something is nothing, and that wasn't it. I didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just sat there, letting the ember of suspicion start to flicker and hiss in the pit of my gut. I thought back to all the nights she said she was working late, the times Dave showed up uninvited with a bottle of bourbon, and the way she always seemed just a little too nice to him, like they were actors in a play no one else had the script to. 20 years of faking it. What the hell did that even mean? Did she fake the smiles at Lily's graduation? Did she fake the tears when my mom died? Did she fake every damn kiss on New Year's Eve while I stood there thinking we were building something real? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside her, listening to the sound of her breathing and wondering what else she was hiding beneath the sound. Her body, so familiar and warm, felt like a stranger's. I could have asked her. I could have woken her up and demanded the truth, but I didn't. Instead, I just watched her sleep, because I had a feeling the truth was going to show itself soon enough. And when it did, I'd be ready. The next morning, the sun came up like it always does, stupid and golden, as if the world hadn't tilted off its axis 12 hours earlier. Tina was already up, humming softly in the kitchen, scrambling eggs like it was just another Monday. Lily was at her internship, and I sat at the dining table pretending to read emails on my phone while my mind played back that toast again, over and over, like a busted tape recorder stuck on one cruel sentence. I didn't say a word to Tina. I didn't have to, because I was already somewhere else in my head, someplace far away from our pale blue kitchen cabinets and the lemon-scented candle she always lit in the mornings. I was scanning through the past like a goddamn crime scene, lining up moments like suspects in a police lineup. The business trips that didn't need to be overnight. The forgotten anniversaries. That time last fall when she said she needed space, but came home smelling like someone else's cologne. I had ignored so many things because routine has a funny way of blinding you. You tell yourself you're happy, you pretend the weirdness is just life being life, but deep down, your gut knows. And mine had been screaming for a while, I'd just been too tired to listen. After breakfast, Tina left for a church meeting. I waited 10 full minutes after the door clicked shut, then I walked into the bedroom and opened her jewelry drawer. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't ashamed either. Not anymore. We had stepped into a different game now, and I was done playing by the rules we never agreed to in the first place. I dug past the gold bangles she hadn't worn in years, past a tangle of earrings and some loose change, until I found it. It was a cheap little thing, a beat-up flip phone, probably from the early 2000s. The battery was nearly dead, but I found the charger buried behind the bed in a box marked Christmas lights. It powered on slow, like it didn't want to wake up, but when it did, it buzzed with 7 unread messages. The last one was from Dave. Same room. Same time. Don't forget the key this time, winky face. The world didn't end when I read it, but it sure as hell cracked a little around the edges. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, reading the message over and over until the words burned into the backs of my eyelids. Then I opened the rest. Some were older, some were flirtier. One just said, "You looked hot at church." That one made me laugh. You know what's funny? I counted. Tina and I were married for 27 years. So when she said 20 years of faking it, I guess the first 7 were real. Or maybe I've got the math wrong. Yeah, 20 minus 27. Hell, you get the point. After about an hour of digging through that damn phone, I found something else. There was a folder tucked away in the Notes app. It was called Therapy 2023, and it wasn't what I expected. No pep talks. No quotes. Just raw, bulleted summaries of sessions Tina had apparently had with Pastor Greg, the same Pastor Greg who baptized our daughter, the same man who once told me I had a strong heart for service. The notes were brutal. Mark doesn't touch me anymore. I feel like I'm married to a wall. I fantasized about Dave during sex, guilt comes after. Pastor says I'm allowed to seek emotional freedom. Emotional freedom. That was a hell of a phrase. I closed the phone and sat there for a long time, staring at the wallpaper, some old photo of a sunflower she must have snapped on one of her solo walks. It hit me then. There was an entire second version of Tina I'd never met. A Tina who kept secret devices and wrote down intimate confessions while I was probably in the garage changing the oil on her goddamn car. The rest of the day passed like a slow-motion car crash. She came home, kissed me on the cheek, talked about a new prayer circle forming at church. I nodded, asked if she wanted wine with dinner. She smiled and said, "You always know how to spoil me." I almost laughed right then and there. That night, while she showered, I checked the glove compartment in her car. Nothing. But then, in the backseat pocket, I found a folded receipt, printed in fading blue ink. Holiday Inn. Room 208. Last Tuesday. In our town. Not hers. I don't even remember how I got back inside. I just know I stood in the hallway for a full minute staring at the bathroom door, listening to the water run, thinking about whether I should just rip the curtain open and demand the truth right there. But I didn't, because I wasn't done collecting evidence yet. And when I finally made my move, it was going to be clean. Surgical. Devastating. There's a strange kind of clarity that settles in once the shock burns off, like how everything seems quieter after a gunshot, or how the world slows down the second before a car crash. That was my headspace by midweek, focused, patient, a little cold maybe, but sharp in a way I hadn't felt since my army days. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I smiled more than usual, started packing Tina's lunch again, even left a little note in her bag that said, "I love you like day one." She smiled when she read it, even texted me a heart emoji like everything was fine. She had no idea I was already peeling back the wallpaper of our life, looking for mold, looking for rot, and, trust me, I was finding plenty. The first thing I did was call in a favor from an old friend, Ray Keller, who had worked with me back when we were doing HVAC installs in federal buildings. After he left the company, he went into private security and eventually PI work, nothing flashy, just good old-fashioned background checks, surveillance, digging through trash if it paid enough. I told him I needed him to be discreet and, more importantly, fast. I gave him Tina's work schedule, her gym routines, even the name of her so-called prayer partner at church. He didn't ask why, but I knew he knew. Guys like Ray don't need explanations when the signs are written in 30-point bold. While Ray got to work, I played the part of devoted husband like it was a role I'd rehearsed for years, which, of course, I had. I asked Tina how her meetings were going, gave her shoulder rubs while she sat on the couch watching home renovation shows, even offered to go with her to Sunday service, which made her blink twice before smiling like I was finally trying again. She didn't know the only reason I sat through that sermon was to watch Pastor Greg fumble through communion while avoiding my eyes like he owed me money and had no intention of paying it back. By Thursday, Ray sent me a Dropbox link with a simple message, "You might want to sit down for this." And he wasn't being dramatic. It wasn't just Dave. It wasn't even just two. It was 3 different men, at least, that Ray had managed to trace through text records, vague online footprints, and a couple of juicy interviews with people from Tina's job at the Community Foundation. One was a coworker from 2 years ago named Brandon, 28, newly married and apparently emotionally vulnerable. Another was some guy from her book club, quiet type, divorced, known to hang around after everyone else left. And then, in the final gut punch, there was Pastor Greg. The man who married us, who baptized Lily, who once sat across from me and told me God would reward my patience. I guess he was rewarding Tina, too, just not in any spiritual sense. The weirdest part? It wasn't about sex, at least not all of it. From what Ray could piece together, Tina had built these long, drawn-out emotional connections with each of them. Secret coffee dates, late-night phone calls, cryptic emails sent from burner accounts and deleted right after. She'd been living parallel lives inside the shell of our marriage, and I hadn't noticed because I was too busy being the predictable guy who handled the taxes, fixed the leaks, and showed up to every goddamn holiday dinner on time. Now I had a choice: confront her and blow the whole thing up, or get smarter, sharper, and make the next move count. I chose the second option. Friday morning over coffee, I casually mentioned that Lily had invited Tina to join her for a weekend mother-daughter getaway. I made it sound last minute, like a spontaneous spa trip 2 hours away. Tina lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, said she'd love to go, asked if I'd be okay alone for a few days. I told her I'd miss her, gave her a kiss on the forehead, and offered to pack her bag. She never questioned why Lily didn't ask her directly, never checked if Lily had said anything herself. She was too excited. That was the moment I knew she was going to meet him. I watched her pull out of the driveway that Saturday morning with a bounce in her step, like she had just gotten away with something brilliant. She didn't know I already had Ray parked 2 blocks down in a rental sedan, camera in hand, full tank of gas. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I had the address from the old receipt, and I knew the routine by now. 3 hours later, Ray texted me a photo. Tina, Dave. Same hotel. Room 208 again. Smiling like teenagers. His hand on her lower back like it belonged there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the image for a long time until the lines started to blur. It wasn't about them anymore, not really. It was about me, what kind of man I'd been, what kind of man I wanted to be when this was all over. I closed the file, walked into the kitchen, and started making a grocery list like everything was normal. Because the trap was set now. And the next move was mine. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, like laying bricks one by one until the wall is so high they can't see over it. That Saturday morning, once Tina's SUV rolled off our street with her overnight bag packed like she was going to spend some heartfelt quality time with our daughter, I stood at the window for a solid minute, breathing slowly, not blinking, watching her disappear like a magician's trick. And when the taillights turned left at the stop sign, I turned away from the glass, walked straight to the kitchen table where everything I needed was already laid out: keys, paperwork, login information, and a new phone I had picked up in cash 2 days earlier from a store that didn't ask questions. I started with the locks because there's something deeply satisfying about the click of new tumblers falling into place. I swapped out the front door, back door, and both garage side entries before the noon sun even hit the top of the oak tree in our backyard. Then I reset the alarm system, changed the garage code from the year we got married, how poetic, to a random string of numbers even I didn't bother memorizing, because I planned to reset it again in a day or 2 anyway. I logged into our joint bank accounts and moved my share into a new solo account under my business name, Legally Clean, nothing shady. I called the credit card company and froze the card she used the most, citing potential fraudulent charges. Which wasn't a lie, if you want to get philosophical about it. Then came the part that required a little more venom. I opened the burner phone and typed out a message I had rehearsed in my head more times than I care to admit. I waited until Ray confirmed they had checked into the hotel, waited until he sent me a blurry but unmistakable photo of Tina pressed up against Dave in the hotel elevator, her hand tugging at the hem of his shirt like a teenager with a crush. Then I hit send. Don't bother coming back. You faked 20 years. I deleted the last 2 hours. No greeting. No signature. Just that. The first call came 30 seconds later. Then another. Then a flurry. I let them all ring out. Within 15 minutes, my old phone lit up like Vegas. 47 calls, all from her. Not a single one got an answer. I didn't block her right away. I wanted her to feel the silence. To stew in it. To wonder how much I knew, how long I'd known it, and most importantly, what I was going to do next. The truth was, I didn't have a full plan yet. Just steps. But they were coming together nicely. I cleaned out her closet gently, respectfully. I didn't throw anything or rip anything or dump perfume bottles down the sink. I folded every piece, placed them in neat bins, and stacked them by the garage door like it was moving day. I even left her favorite leather boots on top, the ones she always wore on church counseling days. Maybe it was petty, maybe not. But it felt good. When evening rolled around, I ordered a pizza and watched the first half of a football game I didn't care about, just to keep my hands busy. At one point, I caught myself laughing at a dumb commercial, and that's when I realized something terrifying. I didn't miss her. Not even a little. Around 10 that night, I heard tires on gravel. Then footsteps. Then the unmistakable sound of a key sliding into a lock that didn't want to play anymore. Then again, a little harder this time, followed by a low thud against the door. I didn't move. I just muted the TV and listened. A pause, then a knock, another pause. Then my name, soft at first, then sharper. Mark. Mark, open the door. What's going on? Did something happen? I stayed still, heart steady, almost serene. Mark, for God's sake, open the door. And then silence. For a while. I looked through the peephole eventually, just to see. She was sitting on the porch bench, still in the same black jacket she'd worn to her mother-daughter getaway, makeup smudged, hair pulled back like she'd done it in a rush. Her phone was in her hand, screen glowing like a tiny lighthouse in the dark, but her eyes were wide, stunned, not tearful, not yet, but confused, like a kid waking up in a different house than the one they went to sleep in. She stayed there for what felt like hours. I turned the TV back on and let it run. At some point, I heard a car pull up out front. I walked to the side window and saw Lily's little blue sedan parked at the curb. She stepped out slow, saw her mom on the porch, and paused. Just stood there, taking in the scene. Then she walked up and said, not loud, not soft, "Mom, what are you doing here?" Tina said something I couldn't hear. Probably some desperate, rehearsed excuse. And then Lily looked at our door, and yelled through it. "What did you do to Mom?" I walked up, leaned my head near the wood, and said loud enough for them both to hear, "Ask her what she did to us." And I walked away. Just like that. Because sometimes the best kind of justice is silence, the kind that leaves them with every answer they never wanted to say out loud. The thing about closure is nobody really knows what it's supposed to look like, not until you're standing face to face with the person who detonated your life, trying to talk without letting every nerve in your body betray the storm inside. It was 3 days after I changed the locks and sent Tina into exile with nothing but her suitcase, her regrets, and her 1,000 unanswered questions, when she finally broke the silence. Not with screaming, not with apologies, but with a simple text at 2 in the morning that said, "Can we talk somewhere neutral? Please." I stared at the screen for a long time before I answered, fingers hovering over the keyboard like they weren't quite mine. The next day we met at a place neither of us had been to in years, a greasy spoon diner just off the freeway that used to be our late-night go-to when we were younger, back before marriage became a contract we maintained instead of a bond we nurtured. I got there early, sat in a booth with a view of the parking lot, and ordered black coffee just to give my hands something to do. When she walked in, wearing that same green coat I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked different, but because I wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. She slid into the booth across from me and smiled, tired and nervous, like someone asking for directions out of a maze they helped build. For a long time, neither of us said a word. We just sat there with the hum of old fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the sound of a dishwasher clanking in the back room. Then finally, she spoke. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, not quite looking at me. "I swear to God, Mark, I didn't plan any of this. It just got away from me." I didn't interrupt. I didn't flinch. I just waited. "I think I fell out of love with you 10 years ago," she continued, eyes now locked on the cheap sugar dispenser between us. Maybe more. I stayed for Lily. And because it was safe. And because I didn't think you'd ever notice. That part hurt, even though I expected it. "I convinced myself it wasn't cheating if it was emotional," she said, and I almost laughed. Almost, but held it in. It wasn't even about sex. Not really. It was about feeling something. I reached into the leather folder beside me, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid it across the table like it was a peace offering. Inside were bank records, phone screenshots, photos from Ray, and a typed note that said, "This is how much I know. And this is what I'm keeping." She didn't open it. She just looked at it like it might bite her. "I'm not here to argue," I said finally, my voice lower than I expected it to be. "I'm not here to yell or ask why. I already know why, and I'm past needing to understand." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't lean forward. I didn't reach for her hand like I might have 5 years ago. That part of me was gone now, buried under too many unanswered texts and too many nights I spent lying beside someone who was somewhere else entirely. "I drew up a proposal," I said, tapping the envelope. "You keep the Subaru, the joint savings account, and the condo your aunt left you. I keep the house and the business. You walk away without court, without lawyers. It's clean." She opened her mouth to protest, but nothing came out. She just nodded slowly, like a woman who'd spent all her words on people who didn't love her enough to stay. "And Lily," she asked, finally. "You'll have to talk to her," I said. "Right now, she doesn't want to see either of us. She thinks I'm cruel and you're a liar. But she's smart. She'll figure it out." Tina looked out the window then, eyes scanning the freeway like she wanted to run. I saw her lip quiver, and for a second I thought she might beg, but she didn't. She just took the envelope and tucked it into her bag like it was some kind of formal surrender. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and it sounded real. "I know," I said, but I didn't forgive her. We stood in the parking lot afterward, an awkward silence between us like strangers parting after a job interview. I watched her drive away, taillights shrinking into traffic, and I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel hate. I felt empty. But not in a bad way, more like someone who just cleared out a room full of old junk and could finally see the floor again. That night, I sat in the kitchen alone, the overhead light casting long shadows across the linoleum, and I stared at a framed photo from our wedding. Tina was laughing in it, head thrown back, eyes closed, like she didn't have a care in the world. And I was standing next to her with this dumb, lovesick grin, my hand on her waist like I'd just won the lottery. I should have asked her what she meant. I whispered to the empty room, 20 years ago. I sat there for a long time, until the house went quiet in that way houses do when they finally breathe again. Then I picked up my phone, my real phone, and scrolled through the contacts until I found a name I hadn't looked at in years. Jessica, Vegas. It was stupid. Maybe reckless. Maybe just a late-night itch for nostalgia. But I hit call anyway, and when I heard her voice on the other end, surprised, warm, confused, I smiled for the first time in what felt like months. "Hey Jess," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You still making trouble in Nevada?" Because sometimes closure isn't a door slamming shut. Sometimes it's a window quietly creaking open.